Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming to this session on Indonesia. My name is Robert Gilbert. The reason I'm sitting here is because I'm a former American ambassador to Indonesia. Believe me, there's no other reason. When I was asked to put together this panel on Indonesia, I came up with the idea of calling it the emerging secret because I've been having the feeling that so few Americans really know anything about Indonesia. Since that time, about 2 or 3 months ago, I think every week I have seen an article in the press about Indonesia, so it's no secret. Most recently, last Thursday in the New York Times, multinationals hasten to invest in Indonesia. This represents a dramatic change from when I first went to Indonesia in 1999. The country had gone through what is called, in a cliche but true, the perfect storm. The 1998 Southeast Asia financial crisis. The 32-year military dictatorship of General Suharto had just collapsed. The country was losing confidence because of losing the long-held island or half-island of East Timor. And it was a wide-open place going through a dramatic set of transitions. When we look at today, it is a dramatically different place. I'm there every few months now in business, and I find it a place that is extraordinarily attractive and interesting. Most interestingly, I think, in addition to the business climate, which we'll be talking about a lot, it has become a real model of democratic transition. There is a solid, vibrant democracy, free press, some would say often too free labor unions. But Indonesia is a country which certainly is cited by the American government as one of the great examples in terms of democratic transition. We have today a very, very impressive panel. I want to start with Ambassador Dino Jalal, who has been in Washington for 2 years?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. Prior to that was President Yudhoyono's senior foreign policy advisor, national security advisor. He has brought brilliant new face to Indonesia throughout the United States. He's traveling all the time, as I know, because I try to reach him on the telephone sometimes and find him in places as far-flung as American Samoa or Boston. But a long and distinguished history. Ahmad Kurniadi, who is the deputy chairman of the Indonesian Investment Coordinating Board. Been with that board for a long time, since the 80s, and has seen, as we were discussing earlier, investment going up, going way down, and now going way back up again. And he is one of the most knowledgeable people in terms of the coordination process, in terms of bringing foreign investment to Indonesia. On my immediate left is Luhut Panjaitan, an extremely interesting person who has almost done it all. Retired 4-star general. During the democratic transition was ambassador to Singapore. In the first democratic government was Minister of Industry and Trade, and now the founder of a highly successful, diversified business group called Toba Sejahtera. And then on the end, Patrick Buluyo, who heads one of the very best private equity firms in Indonesia. We were discussing earlier, graduate of Cornell and managing partner and co-founder of North Star Pacific Partners. So we've got a great group of people. I want to leave some time at the end for questions, and I'm sure there will be many. Let me start off by asking you, Luhut, this question, and then I'm sure some of the others will want to respond too. As I said, 1999, Indonesia, I arrived. Indonesia was in a state of great confusion. There was an economy which had been flying high but had collapsed. the dictatorship had collapsed, and there was a lot of moving around trying to think through the process of establishing a democracy. And there had been no tradition of democracy in Indonesia's 350 years of colonialism and the subsequent independence. But when I take that snapshot and then I look at today, it's dramatically different. What are the factors that you attribute to these serious changes?
Yes, thank you very much, Bob. It is very interesting time at back to 1998, which is, I think, like Ambassador Bob explained, is very hard for us. A lot of foreigners said this country going to be disintegrated at the time. But then the people of Indonesia immediately, we have to do something in order to solve this problem. And a lot of young people at the time graduated from America, and they say, hey, we have to do something. Then together with the armed forces, with all the people of Indonesia, said we have to move with the new tradition that we adopted, what we call it a democracy. But at the time, today, I should say too much. Sometimes we move to the pendulum to the right too much. Now people say, hey, it's too much. We have to move it back to the center, because nearly everything you can say in Indonesia without responsibility sometimes. Why? Because 60% of Indonesian people graduated only from the elementary. So they don't know what democracy is. They thought democracy that they can say whatever they want without responsibility. So this kind of situation, the last 5 years, we are facing very much. But today, if you look at the last 3 years, we are moving very, very good. But again, that we have to do a lot of homework in order to bring this democracy on the right track, which is, I think, we are moving toward that direction, and we'll see next 2014. If we are successful to elect our new president with the peaceful situation, then I can say we are in a successful tradition.
Patrick, tell us why you think the economy has changed so much during that time.
Well, first of all, we have a very sound banking system now, unlike prior to the financial crisis in 1997. I would argue that our banking system is among the healthiest in the region, if not the world. And the regulators are professionals. It's been, we actually, together with TPG, own a bank. And it's been enlightening to see how well we work with the regulator. And the other thing is that the system before 1997 under Suharto, it was centered on one person. There was no system, there was no institution per se, except probably the military, the armed forces. But now there have been, in the past 15 years, there have been a lot of institutional buildings. So we have powerful institutions, there are check and balances in place. We have an independent commission against corruption. We have free press, as you mentioned. And this brings balance to the system. And I think what changed in the past 10 years is that we had a relatively stable government. The president is hopefully going to complete his second full term. And it is the first leader that had served first full term and then got re-elected. And then he's also going to be the first one who will be transitioning to the next president, hopefully, as Pak Luhut mentioned, in a successful and peaceful manner.
Yeah. Ambassador, could
first on Pak Luhut's comments that we're getting too much democracy. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but what is certain is that in Indonesia, democracy has achieved a point of no return. Democracy is irreversible. I mean, the prospect of a military coup in Indonesia is simply unthinkable. But what is special about our democracy is that we have at least achieved two achievements. One is that we've been able to combine democracy with economic growth. In the 70s, we were told that you can't have both. You can either have a lot of freedoms at the expense of economic growth, or a lot of economic growth at the expense of political freedom, which is what the Suharto government was all about. But we proved that wrong. We got one of the most robust democracy in Southeast Asia and in Asia, in fact, and the second highest economic growth in Asia after China. We've grown by 6.5%. this year. In fact, India is just below us. And the second thing that we proved, as Patrick said, that we've been able to combine democracy with stability, right? And there was a time between 1998 and 2002 that we had one president every year. Right, so 4 presidents between 1998 and 2002. But now we have been able to achieve democracy and stability. 2 full-term presidents, President Yudhoyono, and we expect this to continue. So I think the prospects for democracy and for economic development in Indonesia is quite good.
Yeah, perhaps we could get slide 3. Somebody pick that up. I think that shows the economy, how it's moving along.
Yeah.
And I'd like to ask you, Ahmed, could you talk a little bit about one of the interesting questions that I have asked when I've been in Indonesia. Indonesia was really unaffected, essentially, by the 2008 financial crisis. Why was that when so many other countries got hit so hard?
Well, of course, thanks to especially U.S. government, U.S. ambassador to Indonesia, embassy, of course, expert, even American Chamber of Commerce, in order to support us, especially in economic atmosphere. We're working hard together, and compared to other Asian countries, for example, Indonesia can be survived. And because of most of the business activities in Indonesia, majority is small and medium enterprises, not too much big conglomerates compared to Korea at that time or Philippines at the time. So we are happy and try to survive. And since at that time, now the investment, the number of investment increase and increase. And also we from BKPM, Indonesian Investment Coordinating Board, as the government agency, try to coordinate to internal government as well as with the local government, try to attract more foreign investment to come to Indonesia.
Maybe I can
Could you put up slide 4, please? Because I think that's really interesting in terms of the very low government debt. Patrick, yes.
No, I think I just wanted to highlight that 70% of our GDP roughly is driven by domestic consumptions. And export only constitutes 12% of our GDP. And if you compare that to country like Singapore that got hit badly during the crisis, I think their export to GDP is over 100%. The nature of our economy is still more domestic. And not less exposed to the international trade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the size of Indonesia, 250 million, I think that's one of the factors trigger this situation. But I believe in the future with the new policy of the government, for instance, to issue that we are not allowed anymore to export raw material or to limit, and we have to do the downstream industry, which is, I think, could trigger also the more investment in Indonesia, and like infrastructure we have to address, like power plant, like water and infrastructure, toll road, something like that. I think in the future, 5 to 10 years from now, you will see the movement of our economy is much better than today. Yeah, and like also the Mr. Ahmadi explained about the small medium enterprises. I think this is the backbone of our economy, because the middle class right now in Indonesia also growing very much, and which is also give some dynamic of economy in Indonesia. If you look at the last 3 years ago, I think U.S. Exim Bank financed to buy the Boeing 737-800, like 100 airplane by Lion, and then last month 243, I believe, $24 billion Airbus 320, which is, I think, you see the economy movement over there is very, very much very dynamic. So again, I believe that our economy moving very well. Although we still have a lot of problem, we are facing a lot of problem. How to synergize, for instance, with the new autonomy law, from the central government to the governor to the district.
Explain what the autonomy law is.
Autonomy law now used to be like Patrick said, all centralistic, all decision been made in Jakarta. Today, no more. the district, the kabupaten, district we call it kabupaten. This is below the, I don't know what.
The equivalent of
Prefecture.
county executive.
The county has a authority to make a decision for investment in their own area. Sometimes this authority is too much, meaning they're not ready yet in terms of education. Because some of these chief district, they may be graduated only from high school. They're not ready yet to manage funds like 500 million US dollar, only 300,000 people population in that particular area.
Well,
so this kind of
some would say that
issue-
about the American system too.
Yeah.
Could we get slide 7 too, please? About the population. Looking ahead, and that's really exactly where I want to focus, is looking ahead. There's now been a significant period of serious growth, averaging around 6.5%, as you said, Ambassador. Very interesting demographic profile. Moving on to new elections, and it looks like, I don't think there's any question, I agree with the Ambassador, the process of democratization is clearly self-sustaining. What do you see as the big obstacles to maintaining and sustaining this growth, Ambassador?
Well, I think for us, the risk is external. I mean, we've always been worried, for example, if the price of oil rises, that would produce some sort of budgetary difficulty for Indonesia. And that will force the president to make some difficult economic decisions. Price of commodity now is also a challenge. It's declining, and any slight movement in the price of basic staples such as rice will impact on the poor. Recently, the price of onion has risen dramatically, and that has created political issues. But a lot of it revolve around these issues. Yeah.
How about, though, internally, the still developing democratic institutions, the rule of law, legal certainty in contracts?
That remains a challenge. Indonesia still have the challenge of tackling corruption. And it's been an uphill battle. We've won some, we lost some, and there was a Gallup poll recently. They found 88% of Indonesians believe that corruption is still widespread. But what is important is that when you go to Indonesia, you read the papers, the first and second page, the front lines are always about corruption, which means there's an intense public scrutiny on the issue of corruption. So that gives me hope. But I believe that it would take between 10 to 15 years of sustained anti-corruption efforts to make corruption an exception rather than the rule. But we have a very strong anti-corruption commission, and I think another important point is that despite the fact that we still have corruption, and I call this the anomaly of success, we still have growth reaching 6.5%, which means that despite high number of corruptions, opportunities keep multiplying in Indonesia.
So, Ahmad, when potential investors go to Jakarta and sit down with you and your colleagues, and they raise the issue of corruption, what do you tell them?
Well, regarding the investment from our office, as I mentioned before, that we try to make the transparent, to make a simple license procedure, to try to control kind of the bureaucratic process for the investment. So, for example, before to get license for investor, it takes probably 1 month or 2 months. So now less than a week. And we have the system, new system, tracking system. Like we order book from here, from LA, come to Jakarta, we can control the first day, second day, and when will we arrive. And also the all application from the investor to my office, submit application. Then since the beginning, we have the system, front office system and back office. So any investor coming to my office, no need to go to every table. So just put on the front office, and through online system, they can monitor in which table his application under process and when will be finished. These two kind of this process very transparent and no time for other people to think for the corruption or any wrong. So fully control. But this just in the center in BKPM. But part of this, we're still working hard how to get location permit and other working permit in different minister. But we try to cooperate. We share our experience, how important to satisfy investor to come to Indonesia. Changing mindset for especially like General Luhut mentioned, in the local government sometimes mindset need to share with us that investor would like to mutually beneficial between the company and the local company, the local people, and of course with the government of Indonesia.
I would think, Patrick, that given the growth rate, given the demographic profile, looking at areas where Indonesia needs to really move forward, development of human capital and education and the education system are of critical importance. There's been, I would also say, it's interesting to see a dramatic growth of private equity firms and really good ones, starting with your own in recent years. But in addition to more elite kinds of things like what you're involved with, how do you see the country moving ahead in terms of the education system to provide that kind of human capital?
Access to management is the single biggest challenge in Indonesia, and even simple thing, you think that we have 250 million people, and you want to find yourself, forgive me for saying this, but you want to find yourself a driver. It's so difficult. Let alone, in what we find in our businesses is that the macro environment is always favorable, and putting valuation aside, the problems are always micro problems. But how you find management team and how you actually institute good practices, and that you make sure that your management team speak the same language as you are, and then they're accountable to their performance. And if you can find those people, those teams, and fortunately in our case we have found enough. It works really well. But in cases where we pick the wrong team, and then you wanted to make changes, it's not that easy. I mean, I always envy my colleagues in the U.S. because the talent pool is a lot deeper. So the education system, I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. The fact of the matter is that if you look at the number of universities and also world-class educational institutions, they have not grown in terms of capacity as fast as the number of the population, and that basically suggests that we have we are producing the same number of elites, if you use the same that word, and we are leaving a lot of people behind. The government has allocated 20% of the budget for education. It's supposed to be the single biggest post for expenditures. Unfortunately, fuel subsidy now has overtaken that. But we think that we have to look at how that money is spent and whether it's invested wisely. But I think it is also the responsibility of private investors, like people like us, to pay attention to this and see how we can play a role in that sector. I mean, if you are in the business of education, Indonesia is a great place to be in because the demand is there. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at the pay scale of Indonesian executives relative to our peers in the regions, Thailand, Malaysia, they are paid a lot higher.
Mm-hmm. Along the same lines, as the economy gets bigger, and as this population profile continues the way it is, what do you and other business leaders see as what are you talking to the government about in terms of trying to develop the right kind of education system, the right kind of talent?
Yes, I think the biggest problem in the future for Indonesia is human capital. I mean, the quality of education right now, if you look at the good one only in the Java Island, But if you go to Sumatra, Kalimantan, and other islands, the quality of education over there is not really very good. So this is, I think, like Patrick said, it's a good it's a good opportunity also for you to invest in education outside of Java. So talking about technology, for instance, they have only a good technology university in Java. They don't have a good one outside of Java. We have to do that. We have to improve that. The budget, yes, 20% of national budget, quite much, but the problem still huge outside of Java. So we have to address this issue for the next 10 or 15 years. So I really very happy, from the U.S. Doing something to improve the quality of education in Indonesia. Because if without the quality of education in Indonesia, I don't think that we can maintain our economic growth in the years to come. That's number one. Number two, I think not only growth. We are always talking growth, but right now, when the last time I met the president, I said to the president, Mr. President, I think the equality also very important because the ordinary people, the poor people should enjoy also the fruit of this growth. If you are talking only on the growth, this can be trigger what we call it social disobedience, which is very dangerous for Indonesia because this is the archipelago country. So again, the small medium enterprises is very important to address. If you don't successful to improve the quality of education, if you're not successful to improve the equality, to overcome the poverty line, this is, I think, going to be a big problem in the future for Indonesia. And talking about back to 20 years ago, during the old day, yes, at the time, only concentrate in the central government. Right now, no. They have goes down to district, to county, which is, I think, very good. But I believe we cannot give too much. It have to be also controlled by the central government until the quality of people ready on the ground to manage their own area. Otherwise, corruption gonna be, spread out within the country. Yes, it's true. Anti-corruption agency working very hard. If you look at 15 years ago, or maybe not 15, 10 years ago, you never think that they can catch minister. They can put minister to the jail. They can put general active to the jail. Today it happened. They don't care who you are. They care. They get two proven evidence, hard evidence. Okay, you are general, 2-star general. Up, bam, jail. Okay, you are minister close to the president, whatever, bam, to the jail. This is good. Very transparent today. Sometimes people say too much transparency. Yeah, but this is Indonesia. This is Indonesia. But again, we have to manage this, Pat, in order to avoid also too much this turbulence in the process of achievement prosperity in Indonesia.
I think Ambassador, what Patrick and Luhut have been talking about shows that there's clearly seriously rising expectations. People are seeing high growth. There are more people, significantly more people than there were a few years ago. Indonesia is the 4th largest country in the world, growing fast. Managing expectations is something the government has to really be thinking about. I would think this has to do with education again, with job creation, so on. How do you see this? How does the government see this?
Well, you're right, Bob. Our projections are forward are quite good, yeah. But it's not something that we want to take for granted, and it's not time to be complacent. At least two factors that can affect whether or not we will reach these positive projections for Indonesia. One is, can we maintain the level of confidence that is now so phenomenal in Indonesia? There was a poll recently that found about 85% of Indonesians believe that the country is heading in the right direction and that we have the right system, right? No matter what they think about the politicians, and not very high, by the way. I think politicians are around about 15% in Indonesia now in terms of popularity rating. But they believe that the system is doing well. And 2 days ago, I was in Gallup. Gallup also found that about 70-something% of Indonesians believe that the country is thriving. And a very low percentage of Indonesians believe that they are suffering. I think one of the lowest among the countries that they poll. So this sense of confidence, this sense of can-doism, sense of seeing the world as an opportunity is something that is an asset for future development. And if we can keep that, then we're in good track. But second, also, this is most important, can we keep this sense of moderate, open, and tolerant, pluralistic nationalism that has driven Indonesia in the last few years? If this kind of nationalism evolve into something different, if it evolve into an ultra narrow-minded nationalism, then I think we will not be able to reach the trajectory that is believed to happen to Indonesia. So I think if we do well on those two things, being able to maintain this confidence as long as we can, and secondly, maintain an open, moderate, confident, and pluralistic nationalism, I think the future will remain even brighter in the future.
Yeah. Please.
Excellency. Of course, regarding to the human capital, to the education and everything, I think from investment side, we Indonesian government try to create, to maintain the investment climate, very conducive investment climate. So we try to attract more investors to come, not just from foreign, but also domestic. Through this company, Indonesian government requests to do corporate social responsibility. And for example, like Freeport, McMoran, try to give scholarship, to give the school, to develop some school from elementary, junior high school, senior high school, even until university. If so many foreign investors, so many FDI, so many big company, multinational corporation develop in any area in Indonesia, then through this kind of the opportunity also can help government to to support the education getting better and better.
I think if I may just add one thing. I think the challenge for a young democracy like us is that how do you actually incentivize politicians whose KPIs or success measurement is the next election to invest in long-term programs like education where you don't see the result in the next 10, 20 years.
Now, which country are you talking about?
Well, so I guess that's a systematic issue about democracy. How do we actually put this in place and make sure that politicians just do not see these short-term programs and really put long-term investments in place?
Let me ask you this, Patrick. Looking ahead and looking at the structure of the economy, been successful over the past 7, 8 years, 10 years. I read a fascinating fact. A new report from the Boston Consulting Group says that there are about 70 million people in the middle upper class right now, which means consumption has been increasing dramatically, and that this will double to over 140 million by 2020. At the same time, the export sector has been significantly commodity-based, which has its good days and its bad days. What do you see in terms of the trends there?
The trends for value-added manufacturing, unfortunately, is not that clear in Indonesia. And this is going back to how politicians measure the success. I mean, we were actually in a pretty good place because for the first time until beginning this year, Indonesia became a lot more competitive as a manufacturer relative to our neighboring countries like China or Vietnam. And then due to labor unions pressures, the government decided to increase the the minimum wage by 40% overnight. And you can ask for exemptions, but it's not clear how that exemptions are granted. And so I think that have hit export-based manufacturers quite a bit, non-commodity. But at the same time, there are pockets of arbitrage. What I'm trying to say is that you don't actually need, people can actually move their manufacturing bases from Jakarta area to Central Java, where the minimum wage is half of what Jakarta minimum wages are. And you are seeing that happening. But then you need to put the infrastructure in place in Central Java to make sure that they are supporting infrastructures to help these people to thrive. And you know, the infrastructure is not there yet, but that's opportunity for people like us. If the government is so efficient, maybe we won't be able to make as much margins as we are now. So you know, where there are problems, there are opportunities. But you know, that's I think that theoretically we should be a lot more competitive, but we have to watch out what the policies are. This is you know, I play tennis, so this falls into the category of making unforced errors on our part.
Yeah, but one thing make me very happy, you know, because the young Indonesian graduated in the US, for instance, most of them come back to Indonesia. So this is, I think, kind of engine to, you know, to move our economy forward. So this is, I think, the beauty of Indonesia today, but not enough, not enough. So we need more and more young people like Patrick, like Pandu, to, you know, to support our economy, because today we need that that young people who can talk to the foreign people, foreign investor, not my generation anymore, the young generation who can, you know, bring this country move forward better than our generation. Today, the biggest problem, like I said earlier, is education, but also the system. You're talking about the parliament also. This parliament also one of the biggest problems right now in Indonesia. We should address this. We should bring the better quality of member of our parliament, because they should understand also what's the interest of the country, not the interest of their party or the interest of their own group, but the national interest have to be on top of everything.
This is your responsibility, because you told us to learn everything from the US.
It's all
Well, this is the thing. Well, this is the thing. Before the parliament role is not like as strong as today, but now we make it check and balances. But sometimes too much now. The parliament role is much powerful sometimes to the government. So we have to bring this balance. But it's not easy. But we are working very hard on this. But I'm still believe that one day, not too long, I believe, 5 to 10 years, then we can see Indonesia much, much better than today. Again, like new policy of the government, downstream industry, now the ID system, that you cannot avoid not to pay tax anymore. Very, very hard. Because they have what you call centralistic system, which is they can trace your tax. They can put you to the jail. Before, I can have 2 ID in Indonesia, or maybe 3. Today, you cannot. With the IT system, with the ID system, you have only 1. So only 1 Luhut Panjaitan in Indonesia, no more than 1, or Patrick. So this is, I think, the beauty of Indonesia today. Yes, we have a problem, like I said, like I mentioned earlier, but we have also the improvement so much during the last 10 years. This is, I think, the beauty. But again, it's not enough.
Can I comment on that, Bob? I mean,
Please.
I agree with Pak Luhut that look, our parliament can be very, very colorful. But one thing that is unique, and I think it's something we should maintain about Indonesia. I've observed other emerging democracies whereby democracy has brought about political paralysis, where decisions cannot be made. Yeah, I don't need to name the countries. But in Indonesia, we have a thriving democracies and very active parliament, but decisions are being made. You know, things do move on, right? So we're in that place that I think things are good enough for us to keep the positive momentum of growth. The challenge is, how do we lock in reforms? Because reforms can lose steam, and there were times in the last 10 years that reforms, did decline. People lost interest because the crisis was no longer there. So I think the challenge in the coming year until 2014 and for the next president is really how to lock in reforms. Because although democracy is irreversible, there is no guarantee that reforms are locked in fully. Yeah.
What do you see, since you raised this, in terms of public opinion playing a role?
It's going to be very critical.
Yes. Bob, the public opinion in Indonesia is very, very strong. I tell you what, it's like in the US. They can say whatever they want. Before, don't ever try to criticize the president. I remember the old day. Today, you can criticize the president every day. Yes, this is a pity. But sometimes for me, it's too much. Because it's not also...
Former general.
I I think it's too much, sometimes annoying, because they don't know what the background is. They don't know why the president do this. I'm not defending the president. Sometimes president also make a mistake and maybe too sterilized by the system. So what I believe, we should push more the equilibrium or check and balances between the parliament and the government, which is, I think, we are moving toward that direction. Yeah.
Well, some people say to me, please go ahead.
Interesting what is General Ruth mentioned about the comparative between young generation and the member of the parliament. Young generation like Pandu and Patrick study in US more than 2 years, but the parliament visit for the comparative study to US just a week. And they back to Jakarta to implement what they heard, they see here, very instant. So more than less than a week, sometimes just few days. Back to Jakarta, explain what they met here, what they knew here. Just might be just in the upper, not too deep to understand. This is the other problem. And of course, the background of the parliament from different environment, different skill, motivation, and everything. So this probably under the transition, and we hope no longer. And I hope in the next term of the new member of the parliament, meaning also early next year, will be more selective and more education of people to become the member of the parliament.
Well, as I said at the beginning, this is a country that had 350 years of very bad colonial rule. When the Dutch left, there was 6% literacy. No real democracy until 1999, and so we're really only looking at a period of 14 years. And I think when you compare it keeps sounding like Washington to me since I lived there, but when you compare it to older democracies, let me say, this seems to be moving in a more, as I said earlier, a vibrant direction. I want to get back to the economy. With these issues in the democratic system, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of movement. How much do you see, Ambassador, how much do you see this affecting the economy and its moving ahead? What role does the government play in a positive way?
Yeah,
and a
that's a
negative
good
way
point,
in moving us ahead?
Robert. You know, my wish, and I don't know if, and you tell me if this is wishful thinking or not, I hope Indonesia has reached a point whereby our economics has been decoupled from our politics. I mean, look at what happened in Thailand. You know, they had serious back and forth between the Reds and the Yellows, coup d'etats, governments fall down, and then so on and so on. But the economy grew, right? So there is a way for civil society and corporate class, the middle class, to keep maintaining economic growth, irrespective of the political infighting. I'm expecting, again, this needs to be proved by history. Let's see what happens in 2014, that we have also reached that degree of maturity in terms of whatever political infighting happens, the economy will continue to grow. So I hope that's something. But again, I don't have any clear guarantee. That
I can add on that, Bob. I don't see any problem on that. The people right now, they said if something happened with this, the victim of this ordinary people. So they don't want the riot happening in Indonesia anymore. Because 1998 is a really, really very bad for them.
Traumatic.
Not for me. I'm okay, I can go anywhere. Patrick can do anywhere. But the ordinary people, they're the victim. So the spirit of that today, they say, okay, you fight. As long as my economy is running, my small, medium enterprise is moving, I'm fine. So this is, I think, this good spirit in Indonesia. So people said, hey, maybe after 2014, going to be, I said, no way. Whoever going to be the president, they said, okay, business as usual. But the only problem, the next president is very, very important to understand about the WTO, understand also about the need of the people, that also the track record of the next president is very important for Indonesia. Otherwise, we cannot achieve 8, 9, 10% for the next 10 or 15 years. That's what I believe. So I'm pushing very hard to my friend, to my colleagues. Hey, look, we have to see the criteria of the next president fulfill the need of democracy.
So there will be elections in 2014, first for parliament, then for president.
Yeah.
As somebody said earlier, we now have for the first time, 2 consecutive terms by the same president. There's stability. This will be something of a landmark set of elections. How do we know that there's not going to be any kind of dramatic set of policy changes? How do we know that this is still going to stay in the same trajectory?
Because whoever comes to power will inherit the same challenges. The fact that we have young and big population that still require a lot of jobs to be created. And when it's one thing when you are in opposition and you say things, but once you sit in that chair, you will face exactly the same issues, and your options are limited. And I think we have seen over and over again that the government will have no choice but to follow these policies. There will be differences in nuances and qualities of the government. I think what we have seen when, going back to your question about democracy and the adverse effect, is that we have sometimes policymakers who are so risk averse that it takes them forever to analyze decision making, and some of them are also because what the other side of the state is doing to the policymakers. I think we had a situation where there was a bank bailout, and the policymakers were being investigated. And my personal concern is not about the case itself, but the perception that it created among the policymakers that if they make tough decisions, they can get prosecuted based on the policies that they made, regardless whether or not they personally benefited or they actually benefited other people from making that decision. Those are the nuances. But I think when it comes to general policies, every leader will face the same issues and will have no choice but to continue on.
I think, sorry, please.
One important thing also, whoever the next president, the next government, Indonesia also now we have so many commitment with the international side, starting from Asian and APEC, and also we have 67 bilateral investment treaty with other 67 countries partner. So we try not to more restrictive, to at least similar condition with the recent regulation, something like that. So for the investor, no need to be worried to invest in Indonesia.
But I keep hearing complaints from people that now that Indonesia has become successful, there are a lot of domestic groups pushing on the government to cut back on openness, to put in new tariffs, new non-tariff barriers. I know there are a lot of governments that are concerned about this. Do you think this is a trend, or do you think...
I think in the run-up to 2014, it's expected that some degree of economic nationalism will rise, and that will be part of the national economic debate. And my prediction is that after the election is done, we have new president, that will, it will settle. But I think I can't speak for the next president, and I agree with Patrick that he or she will face the same challenge. But more importantly, Bob, the next president of Indonesia will inherit the new assets that Indonesia never had. What is it? A $1 trillion economy, the second highest growth economy in Asia, the largest middle class in Southeast Asia, the lowest debt to GDP ratio, and so on and so on. For him to bungle this would be the greatest historical blunder of all time. So I have high expectations that the next president of Indonesia will be realistic to build on these assets that has been hard earned by Indonesia. We're a member of G20 now. We have no choice but to look at the world in a very different way than we did before. Before we just saw the G7 and we thought economic decisions are made by America, Europe, and Japan. Right, and we felt left out. But now, we're a G20 economy, and we are a regional power with global interests. And that new president in 2014 will need to hold that up. Yeah.
Okay. Luhut, I'm going to give you the last word, and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I think, if I may strongly advise to you, it's about time to invest in Indonesia. I don't know, no problem. Yeah, I mean, we have problem, but I think it's not real big problem in Indonesia today. We are ready to accept you, to receive you over there. If you have any problem, you have a good advisor here, Bob Gilbert. And he knows Indonesia very well. I'm serious on this. You see, so not like before. Then you need any advice from us, we are more than welcome to help you, to assist you. Patrick, young generation, my generation, ambassador here, and Pak Ahmad Gurnadi. This is more transparent, open, and we can discuss. We can tell you the truth. This is the problem. Don't do this. Don't do that. Better do this. Then boom, you can do it. So you can make good margin in Indonesia. In the US, maybe you make a little bit margin like this. But in Indonesia, I promise you, you make a good margin over there with the limited risk, with the good advice, like from Bob Gilbert. Thank you very much.
Okay. Questions? Please.
Thank you. Tim Detells from TPG, and we've been a very happy investor in Indonesia over the last 10 years, and the government and the regulators have been very welcoming, and it's been a great place to invest. And I'm just, I'd like to just dig into this next election cycle, which is quite fascinating for voyeurs, because you have three people out there, Prabowo, Megawati, Bakri, who are kind of throwbacks, to say the least. I notice Ambassador used the word he. There's one she in there. And so I'm just curious, where does the emerging, like SBY was, where does the emerging candidate come from? And as we watch this election cycle, what should we look for? Because it's a very interesting time.
Volunteer.
Okay, let me give to go to slide number what is it? The number 19, please. I'm talking about the political system in Indonesia. The political system in Indonesia today, there are 14 political party participate in our next election, April 2014. So 3.5% parliamentary threshold. I believe only 7 or 8 political parties could enter the parliament. Now, if you touch the presidential threshold 20%, I believe only 3 political parties. This is based on our polling result. This is Golkar, PDIP, and Democrat Party. So there are 3 candidates maximum. I don't see more than 3 candidates. If you don't hold 20%, even you are very popular, you don't have a vehicle to run to be a president. So Golkar already has one. It's Abu Rizal Bakri. PDIP might be Ibu Megawati. And Democrat, we don't know. They are, I think, doing their convention by starting next month.
So, Pak Luhut, I just want to point it out that this is a question from Tim Detells, who used to run Goldman Sachs, and one of his former employees has publicly announced that he's running for office. Minister Gita Wirjawan. So
Okay.
I think
So there is no independent candidate by constitution.
Yeah.
But if you look at now, the polling as a major polling doing in Indonesia, the highest on the top is the governor of Jakarta. This is 31%. And below that, far away, is Abu Rizal Bakri, Prabowo, and Megawati. So that's, I think, the situation. But Jokowi, he's belong to PDIP. But I don't know, maybe Karen knows better than me whether Ibu Megawati want to run or not. Yeah. But if Jokowi run, I don't think anybody can beat him per today. We don't know next June next year. But we can see his popularity is really, really phenomenal today. The 2009 president is SBY. Electability is 80. It was 86%. Today, Jokowi 87.5%. You see the popularity of Jokowi. So we'll see what happened by April 2014, and then we can see the better landscape of our Indonesian politics. So whoever your candidate, if you cannot get 20%, forget it.
I think I just want to add. I think that the next president of Indonesia should be a man of the future. I mean, the Indonesian
Person.
Sorry,
Person.
a person of the future. Sorry, yeah. So he needs to be. He or she needs. Sorry, needs to be. Look, we're now good, yeah, but we have space to be great, right? So the next leader of Indonesia, he or she needs to be able to bring Indonesia from good to great. You know, we have the possibility for the first time to reach near zero poverty and zero extremism, hopefully. There's now a little bit of erosion of tolerance in Indonesia. There's rising, frictions between religious forces. That has never been what Indonesia is all about. So the next leader must be able to keep what is best about Indonesia and bring Indonesia from the level of good to great.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you for a wonderful talk. Thank you for a wonderful talk. What do you think the participation rate would be in the next democratic election?
Oh.
If you had to guess, and will it be a broad-based participation?
We have 140 million voters in 2014, 40% of whom are first-time voters. So, if you cannot appeal to this 40%, you're toast.
So I think very high.
Over
Very
80%.
Yeah.
The average has been over 80% in the last 3 elections.
Very high, because they like to have the good president 2014. Because this is the last result of the polling. So the participant only around 75 to 80%. Yeah.
Gentlemen, in back.
And people, good experience now, more experience because so many elections before.
Graham Rich, Portfolio Construction Forum in Australia. Inspiring talk, thank you, and thank you for the quality of the panel. Excellent. In the context of coming from Australia and Australia seeing itself as, in the widest sense, part of Asia, and the comment from the ambassador about APEC and interaction with the US, I wonder if any of the panelists would give quick comment about the key countries that Malaysia is seeing as countries that it looks to involve itself with in trade and in diplomacy outside of immediate Asia. Thank you.
Outside of
Asia.
Now Indonesia has developed strategic partnerships with over a dozen countries. A lot of them are in Asia, but now we have a strategic partnership with the United States. We call it comprehensive partnership. But also we establishing a very strong upgraded relations with emerging powers across the board, with South Africa, with Turkey, with Brazil. We have developed strategic partnerships with Russia also. For us, this is the new diplomacy, forging new diplomatic and economic ties with the emerging powers, not just in Asia but globally.
Last question.
You mentioned the do's and don'ts that you counsel on the government water initiative. What is the biggest don't for a business person who wants to start doing business in Indonesia? Try to be as specific as you can. What's the biggest don't?
Patrick.
The biggest don't.
Patrick.
Don't come alone.
What do you mean by that? That's not
Don't come alone. Yes, I think you have to get a good local partner. Yeah, I think this is the very big goal to avoid or to minimize the risk over there. Yeah, a lot of experience over there. It's like Churchill, for instance. This is also one the good lesson and learn from the foreign investor. So they don't know the area. It's like a military operation. You have to send your pathfinder before you send them. No, this is easy. I don't think this is a big problem on that. If you have a good friends over there, you have a good information, intelligence, you send your main task force, you can be successful.
Yeah, I think one also important thing to know for the foreign investor, like local, think global, but act locally.
Yeah.
Because if foreign investor try to publishing before they come to Indonesia, before they invest in Indonesia, then quite difficult for us from the investment side, from the investment agency to encourage them, because everybody know For example, from US is going to invest something business in Indonesia, then everything to become expensive. So if keep quiet, think to find local soft will be easier for us. And once declare everything already done, starting from commercial, for the commercial production will be fine. But not from the beginning, public talking in the media and everything, then very difficult for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Patrick.
Makasih, Pak.